Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Friday COVID-19 update for Eau Claire County. It's our opportunity to share with all of you what's happening with COVID-19 in our community and all of the planning and response activities that are occurring to keep people safe in this community. We appreciate you joining us. We've continued these daily media briefings, and we'll be moving next week to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday media briefings. We hope you continue to join us for those as well. We continue to work with many partners across the state, region, and county to respond to this unprecedented pandemic. And we know that none of us have immunity to this disease. We also know that the disease, as we've talked about many times, may show up in people with no symptoms. And we know that there are populations that have a real risk with this disease. Those vulnerable elderly, the vulnerable people that don't have a strong immune system may get very sick and may die. It's why we need to continue to take this very seriously. Today, Dale Peters is with us to share what is happening as the liaison officer for our incident command, working across our county with all of our government leaders as well as many other partners. He's connected with those leaders to really share with them what's happening and also to hear from them how we can be of assistance. A status update, and then we'll return afterwards for some questions if people have those. In Wisconsin, as of late last night, 3,068 positive cases for COVID-19, an increase today of 183 positive cases, and 128 deaths, an increase of 17 deaths. 33,225 negative tests, with 29% of positives reporting as being hospitalized, 904 people. Again, any death is too many when it's related to a disease like this. Our hearts go out to those families. While we don't yet have a reported death in Eau Claire County, certainly anybody in the state is something we should all be caring about. That's a person, not just a number. In the state, there are now 20 laboratories doing testing with a capacity of over 3,750 daily tests able to be done. The state did report today that they are seeing that not as many tests are being done as we actually have capacity to do tests. And they have now expanded their definition of who can be tested in the state, both at the State Lab of Hygiene, and have encouraged clinicians across the state to consider testing of individuals with their clinical judgment who they think should be tested. The goal is to be getting up to that full capacity, obviously understanding that also testing supplies continue to be a question long term, but that we test individuals so we have a good, true picture of disease in Wisconsin. The State Lab of Hygiene and the Milwaukee Lab, as our government-funded labs, continue to prioritize healthcare workers and hospitalized, very ill patients. But other labs are encouraged to consider looking at testing based on clinical judgment, those that are potentially ill with COVID-19. We are particularly across the state looking at congregate settings as being one of our risk places. So certainly long-term care facilities, shelters, and other congregate settings where people are together in spaces and may also be vulnerable for other reasons, making sure that we are getting a good picture of the disease in those places. We also know statewide that while the disease can impact anybody, none of us have immunity to this disease, that there is a particularly high percentage of African Americans in our state who are getting sick from and dying from COVID-19, something that all of us should care about. This is an issue in our state for all kinds of diseases. We have a disparity in outcome for our African American population for many diseases, and we are seeing that that is again not different related to COVID-19, and we have to care about it. That health equity issue is critically important. Everything from access to care to long-term stress to poor living conditions and other reasons that people may not have as healthy of bodies to withstand a disease like this are things that are important to pay attention to. The state is certainly looking at that and have provided additional resources, particularly in areas of the state where this is seen as a concern. We were also told today about a state program to increase food share to households that are involved in that program. Having safe and healthy food available for people that struggle with that is critically important, and extra benefits will be going out to that food share population via their Quest cards this month. And the state strongly encouraged people that have had an employment change, particularly because many people are impacted with their employment status because of COVID-19, to access their state resources for health insurance. And there is information on the state website about that as well. Having healthcare coverage is important for all of us in Wisconsin, outside of the COVID-19 pandemic, but certainly now critically important. In Eau Claire, we have 21 confirmed cases, again, no increase from yesterday. Our testing numbers are at 1,160, an increase of 86 tests done, with 1,033 negative tests, an increase of 102 negative tests. We recently have, over the course of the last week, but again yesterday, met with healthcare providers across the region and regional health department directors to really discuss our surge planning. Surge planning is really thinking about when and if hospitals are overwhelmed because of having COVID-19 cases. What will we do to work together to plan for that? Again, a very important meeting yesterday about that, with some very specific guidance from those healthcare institutions about what they're thinking about need, and we are now exploring the specific locations for a potential surge. Again, nothing decided yet. Certainly as we make decisions about that and work with the state on those details, we will be letting everybody know about that. But do know that significant progress continues to be made in thinking through what might the need be and how can we best do that. We do have a regional footprint in this community again, and that regional footprint means we need to plan not just for Eau Claire County residents, but for residents in a much larger area. We also, like we spoke about yesterday, spent a lot of time talking to our faith community. Again, our thoughts are with those that have faith as a critical part of their family and their individual beliefs. And this is a tough week for many who have faith traditions that fall during this week, and we understand that. We have strongly encouraged those faith traditions to keep their congregations as safe and at home, and we will continue to spend time strengthening that message throughout the weekend. In short, we really want people to be safer at home. We also have spent time talking to long-term care facilities and assisted living facilities over the last number of days, obviously prior to that as well. Long-term care facilities and assisted living facilities are places where we know the spread of disease is particularly concerning. We're really pleased to have a strong partnership with those organizations in this community. They are an amazing partner, and they're working hard to provide really needed care to a vulnerable population. We also know it's really hard on families, that the ability to have a close connection with loved ones that are in those facilities is changed with this pandemic. We are counting on families understanding that the long game is what we all need to pay attention to. We need to get through this pandemic and then find ways to reopen the ability for people to have that connect. We're asking long-term care facilities to really pay attention to minimizing the risks to people that want to visit, as well as those people that are living there. So the order, the Safer at Home order, does not allow for broad entertainment and travel for entertainment and events happening around long-term care facilities. We know that's happening in some communities, and we are communicating clearly that's not essential travel and that should not be happening. We're hoping people find creative ways to bring that social connectedness and that entertainment to the residents in safe ways from their home. The same with visits. Finding ways to visit while you are still at home with those loved ones that are in long-term care facilities and assisted living facilities. We know it's hard. Most of us likely have someone that we can't be in person with because the risk that will give to that individual. And we're really counting on people in Eau Claire understanding that it's more important right now not to increase risk and to stay home. Just because we have not had new positives does not mean we don't think that there is disease happening, and does not mean that we think that we'll soon be out of all of this. We are continuing to plan for a potential surge. We are continuing to plan for the lifting of the Safer at Home order. And we are doing the work we need to do to make sure long-term that we have enough capacity to follow up on cases and do the investigation that needs to happen to keep disease not spreading. We also are working with law enforcement, and the community may see shortly that law enforcement in our community, when they have to come in close contact with an individual because of their work, they will be wearing a mask. That is new recommendations that have come forward, and community members may see that. Do know that that is happening. The mask on the officer really is to protect the public as well as to protect that officer. Doesn't mean that we think that COVID-19 is everywhere in our community, but it's our measure to keep our law enforcement officers as safe as possible when they have to have very close contact. Our best measure for them and for all of us is to keep distance. So you will continue to hear me say the physical distance is our most important and critical strategy to prevent disease. Golf courses continue to be a question, and I will say again that golf courses are not allowed to be open, and travel to golf courses is not an essential travel that is allowed. We do know that some golf courses across the state have chosen to be open. In Eau Claire County, that is being enforced, and it will not be happening. And certainly we understand that it's difficult in a population like ours to have differences across communities, but in fact it is not an allowable activity, and travel for it is not allowable. So I am going to turn it now over to Dale. We'll come back first with some concluding comments afterwards and questions if anybody has them. Thank you.
Thank you, Liska. As Liska's pointing out in many different ways, this is really very hard. Right? There's significant disruption to our daily lives. Disruption that's requiring us to be focused, be patient, and of course address this with kindness and grace. Grace to the overall situation, and then of course grace to those of us that we're living with in different quarters than we've had to perhaps in a long time. But I'm hopeful that people are looking at this as an opportunity. In some respects, it's an opportunity to connect with family, perhaps revisit some traditions. Family games, sewing of course is becoming more popular, including sewing masks, cooking, crafts, and something we want to talk about this weekend, and Liska was talking about, and that's family worship. It's also a time to alternate, look at alternate routines with fitness, and I don't know if other people have seen this, but I didn't know that my neighborhood had so many dogs, but they seem to be getting an awful lot of exercise these days, and there seems to be a lot of cleaning and organization going on. So at this time of an incredibly difficult, challenging time, people are figuring out how to make this work and how to make it, but it's difficult and it's challenging. And this afternoon I'd like to share some thoughts about four things. One, the faith activities that are upcoming this weekend, our use of open spaces, yard waste and brush sites, and the support that the City of Eau Claire is offering to our businesses at this time. So this is one of the largest and most active weekends of the year for those that have faith as part of their life. And of course, faith is something that's very deeply personal, but there's also a social component to it. A much larger group of either family or church community that's usually involved with faith activities. And it's hard. It's really hard not to be with those larger groups at this time, to be not with the larger family group or with the larger church group. And that's because these are groups of people that we love and we care about. We love these people and we care about them a lot. But the best thing you can do to this larger family group and this larger social group that's in your faith community is to, if you want to keep them safe, is to stay small and to not expand that small group. So please, stay at home, stay in the small group, and find ways to practice that faith in that small group. Remember that home or family worship is supported strongly in most faith scriptures, and it's common throughout history, especially in times of trial, and perhaps times of this trial. So it's an opportunity to strengthen and focus your small family group connections in your small family faith. We also look at our open spaces. This is spring. It might not feel like it this weekend because there's snow predicted, but it is spring and there's a lot of spring activities that are happening. Remember that most of the open spaces in Eau Claire County are open to all activities as long as they are within that safer at home order. So our trails and our parks and our lovely county forests is all open, as are our recreation areas and our cemeteries. But they must be used within the safer at home constraints, which means you stay only with your small group and there's social distancing with any other people that happen to be there. In Eau Claire County, all of the playgrounds are closed and most of the ball fields are closed. And even if the ball field is not closed, the ball field is certainly closed for any type of group activity or group ball game. So in Eau Claire County, the ball fields and the playgrounds, are closed. And although it's a little early to talk about camping, all of the Eau Claire County owned and run campgrounds are closed at this time, and other campgrounds in Eau Claire County are being reviewed and will likely have some adjustments in the future. If you do have the opportunity to go out and use our open spaces, which are lovely and beautiful and getting more so every day at this time of year, please be respectful of that space. We really don't have the staff to clean up after you. It's very limited. So pick up after yourself if you do use these open spaces. In other parts of the state, people have misused or inappropriately used the open spaces, and that's meant that these open spaces get closed down. So please be respectful to the public spaces so that they can remain open for everybody to be able to use. And while we're out and about, there's an urge to clean and to spruce up things, and that includes our yards. And this is an excellent time to spruce up your yard. And in fact, many of you are doing that. I was talking this morning with Josh Box from Box Sanitation, and he was telling me that nationally, yard waste is up 184%. So if you're thinking about cleaning up your yard, you are not alone. But we do need to talk about how you're going to take care of that yard waste. The Jeffers Road brush site, which is a partnership with Box Sanitation, and it's one that we're very grateful for. Box Sanitation is working very hard to open that site on April 15th, which is the usual and scheduled time for the brush site to be open. So the Eau Claire brush site will be open next Wednesday on October 15th, and April 15th. And following that, it will be open every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday from 10 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock. So starting April 15th, then Monday, Wednesday, and Saturdays, the brush site will be open on Jeffers Road between 10 and 5. The waste haul curbside pickup, which usually happens in the spring, is also going to continue to happen this spring, and you can plan for that. It will be the week of May, or the period of May 4th through the 8th. So all of the haulers are committed to providing the curbside yard waste pickup that we're used to, and that will happen on May 8th or 4th through the 8th. Concerning economic recovery efforts, we don't know that we've talked a whole lot about this in the past, but the city has revolving loan funds, and we've suspended payments for 3 months for anyone that has a loan in the revolving loan fund. That loan payment will be then tacked on to the end of the loan. And as many of you know, in the hotel and hospitality industry, there's a room tax that has to be paid. And the City of Eau Claire has suspended that room tax for 60 days beyond the emergency order. And so that's allowing the hotel and hospitality industry that has rooming situations to be able to help with their cash flow and payment of those room taxes. The City of Eau Claire, though, will be continuing its payments to Visit Eau Claire because 70% of the room tax goes to Visit Eau Claire. They, of course, promote activities in our area, and so we will be suspending the payments for the 60 days for the room tax, but continuing the payment to Visit Eau Claire. We've also taken action consistent with the state to eliminate our late fees on all water and sewer utility bills. And additionally, the Eau Claire Economic Development Corporation and the City of Eau Claire and the Downtown Association and our Eau Claire Economic Development is all working together to share information related to the federal programs with the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, the Paycheck Protection Program. There's some significant programs out there for small businesses with less than 20 employees, and also for how people can access their unemployment. So, challenging time for businesses and for employees that do not have the opportunity to continue to work, and know that all of the economic development agencies within the county are working together to get information out and assist people at this difficult time. So as Lisa pointed out, there's an awful lot going on this weekend. And my ask would be that we lift up and are grateful for all the workers, both public and private in healthcare, that are on the front lines of getting us through this. It's important that we recognize the work that all of those people are doing to help us get through this. Please maintain your small groups and your social distancing, and I would wish that you have a very good spring weekend of renewal, perhaps renewal of spirituality if that's part of your life, physically with some rest and relaxation, and emotionally a weekend that's filled with kindness and grace.
And knocking the podium.
Thank you, Dale. I'm always so impressed with our leader in this community ability to share important information, but also, this is tough stuff. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. We want to remind everybody that the website is a resource for you in Eau Claire County, coronavirus.echealthdepartment.org. The call center continues to be open and will be open this weekend. That number is 715-831-7425. And do know that we will be working this weekend responding to additional cases if they come in, and working to support partners across the community on making sure we're ready for the next stage of this pandemic and responding to what's happening now. I also, as Dale said, hope people find time this weekend to pause and reflect, to find ways to continue their family traditions, even if they are very different than what they may have done in previous years, and to find ways to really celebrate their faith traditions as well. I know my family will be doing both of those things at a distance, and it's hard, and I understand that. We will continue to meet again starting next Monday, Wednesday, and Friday being here. If we have significant things to share, we will let the media know, and we will be back at 3:30 on those off days if that is necessary because of a significant change. We're open now for questions. Yes?
It's kind of a two-part question. First of all, has there been any update with recoveries within the county? And if so, is that 2-week, 14-day time frame still about an accurate amount of time for people needing to quarantine? Are you finding that there have been recoveries, that that's enough time? Do they need more? Do they need less? If you can speak on that.
Sure. So the question is related to recovery primarily, and the time frame for that, and what do we mean by that? The state has made a decision to stop reporting the recovery data, so I know that's a bit confusing to the general public. Most people, once they have COVID-19, They are isolated again as they have the disease. All people are. So anybody that is identified as a positive is isolated, meaning they can't leave their home, and that isolation continues until following resolution of symptoms. And plus some additional time, and I know Paulette has previously spoken about that during these forums. That time frame can be very, very different from individual to individual. The 14-day time frame is for quarantine of those people that have been exposed to a case. Within that 14-day time frame, the person that has been exposed is likely, if they're going to come down with disease, to come down with disease. And that's the window that science has shown us, that if you're going to get a disease from an exposure at this point in time, it will be within that 14 days. And that's really playing out very well. If people are exposed during that time frame or afterwards, their 14 days start again. Individuals that have had the disease, the time frames have been very different. The definition of recovery is challenging, and that's why the state has made the decision no longer to have that as one of the defined counts that we get. Any additional questions? Yes?
Yeah, I've got one. This potential, I guess, slowing of cases locally, I think Oakland County has not reported any increase since, I think, Monday. Does that mean, I've seen a lot of questions from people on this, does this mean we are overreacting with the shelter-in-place order, or does it mean it's working and we should keep doing it?
Sure. So how should we really, when we look at not having new cases since the beginning of the week in Eau Claire County, what should we think about that? What does that tell us? I think we can say after 2 weeks of being under the Safer at Home order that it is possible that Safer at Home order and people keeping their circles small has helped with the number of cases that we are seeing. It is also possible that we need to do some additional testing, and with that testing we may find additional cases. At this point in time, broadly across the state, there are still increasing cases, and you've seen that in the Wisconsin numbers. We know disease is out there. We know we will get new cases coming into this community. It's a good sign, but not a certain sign that anything is specifically working at this point. 4 weeks out from the Safer at Home order, it will be much easier to say, as long as people are following the Safer at Home order, that physical distancing and that small circle have made a real impact on case numbers. At a state level as well, those numbers are not increasing at the rate that we would have otherwise expected if we wouldn't have done this. And I think that's a really important thing for people to understand, that there's a reason we're doing this, and we do have what is anticipated to be fewer people sick right now and impacting our healthcare system.
So you would say that the shelter-in-place order was not an overreaction. It might have actually helped us to flatten the curve.
So the question is, what is the perspective about the Safer at Home order and whether that was a good thing to do? Yes, I believe that the Safer at Home order has already started to show us that cases can be impacted. We can't fully know that until we're out a little farther, but certainly the Safer at Home order means that fewer people are getting exposed from people that do have the disease. Yes?
Going back to what you were mentioning, you guys have been very adamant regarding golf courses in this area. Our own law enforcement has been very adamant that it's against the governor's orders. Some of our surrounding counties have kind of heard otherwise, whether they're reaching out to their law enforcement or whatever and asking them, being told it's okay. Mm-hmm. Can you maybe speak to where maybe some of the disconnect is happening, why some are being told absolutely not and others are saying no, it seems like it's okay? Is it a misinterpretation of the order, or I guess can you speak to that?
Sure. So it's again a question about golf courses specifically. The order and the governor have been very clear that golf courses are not to be opened. There is not any question about that. It is clear that some people are choosing not to follow the order. And I think the simplest way to say it is that there have been choices made to not follow the order. And we know that is true. is not what we are doing in Eau Claire. And really the science behind the order is safer at home means our circle is small, we are not leaving except for essential reasons. And the more that we say, for these certain essential reasons, let's open it because we think we can be safe, the more risk we have. And really in all cases, at this point in time, the important thing to think about is that we don't want to open even a crack that door at this point. I recognize that there are many, many, many examples of creative ways to do activities in this community that would be safe. They could also be done and people wouldn't be safe, and that's our problem. Any other questions? So I want to make sure that I wish everybody a good weekend. For those people that do have a faith tradition that includes special events this weekend, I hope you find time for peace and learning and joy with that weekend celebration. For those of you that are missing family right now, know that my thoughts are with you. I am tremendously missing my children and my family as well. And I hope people stay safe and healthy and at home, and we'll talk to you on Monday.